Hello and welcome back to Continental Club, where we discuss the hottest topics in European football. Joining me today, it's Michael McCubbin and Henry Hill, and it's a sad day for football because obviously we got the very sad news that Diego Maradona passed away yesterday at the age of 60, gone too soon. So before we kick off on the show, McCubs, I just want your immediate thoughts on his passing.
Obviously it was a bit of a shock. I don't know. He wasn't in great health, was he, for a number of years? So I don't know. It's a difficult one. You still didn't really expect it. He's been such a presence, hasn't he, in the lives of kind of football fans in general. You know, he was like one of the first kind of footballers from kind of before my time who I really kind of learnt about as a kid. But obviously in England, the first thing you learn about him is that he, scored the hand of God and whatnot, and the kind of controversy around him. So I guess you have a fairly kind of unique view of him to begin with, and then it's only kind of later that you realise just what an amazing player he was. But it's difficult because none of us really knew. We didn't really grow up with him. But whenever you speak to anyone who was watching football in the 80s, they just they're just so in awe. And when you watch back stuff of him, when you watch kind of documentaries about him and whatnot, he really did. He had this kind of power, I think, that is hard to maybe gauge for people in our generation, where we've had so much access to kind of footballers through kind of how much they're on TV and how much they're on social media and whatnot. I think Maradona still has this kind of mythical status that I think even Ronaldo and Messi have never really been able to have because of the age that we live in. So he represents a time in football which is kind of different to now, but obviously such an influential player. I don't think I could imagine Messi, existing in the way that he does without Maradona having come before him, if you know what I mean. He was so the parallels between the two are quite amazing, really.
I really do, yeah. I mean, what a player, what an icon. I mean, Henry, some of his goals, some of his moments, he shouldn't just be remembered for the controversy in his life and the latter years where he didn't seem particularly, at his best. But, as a player, sort of unparalleled, unmatched, really.
No, it's unbelievable. I mean, I'm sure like you guys, I spent a lot of last night just going through YouTube compilations of some of his greatest goals, some of his greatest skills. I was just smiling the whole way through. He was incredible, and they often say you have to remember the pitches that he was playing on, the kind of standard of defending at the time, and what was acceptable, I suppose, on the pitch. And it really does shine a light of just how incredible a player he was. And I've been lucky enough I've been to Naples a fair few times, and you really feel his aura there and his sense of how he owned and donned that city. I mean, it's one of the most incredible kind of love stories ever, really, his going to Naples, particularly during that period of its history and what he went on to achieve there. I mean, my housemates, neither of whom particularly are interested in football, we've all agreed to sit down and watch his documentary tonight about his time in Naples there. And if anyone wanted a sense of kind of how much of an impact he had on the team, there was actually a really good Sky Sports article that came out a few months ago called Diego Maradona at Sevilla, the Forgotten Year. I don't know if either of you two read it, but it documents his one season that he played at Sevilla, how that ended up actually even happening. And it's a really fascinating look at the influence he had on the team there. It was short and he didn't maybe perform as well, but you could feel his legacy and aura within the club just in that one season alone, and that's something I imagine Sevilla will never forget. But McCubbin, you're right, he has this mystical sense of aura and legacy which very few will kind of be able to replicate in the modern day. A bit like Muhammad Ali perhaps in boxing, that kind of way he went above the sport and captured the heart of the imaginations just with what he did on and off outside of his sport as well. So I mean, like I said, I just spent a lot of last night smiling and going through some of his best moments because he really was just an incredible player and a delight to behold. And I know, Dougie, you also love Boca Juniors, and it's I can't even begin to imagine the influence and kind of the feeling there, because they've really lost a genuine hero.
Absolutely, yeah. I thought Gary Lineker spoke beautifully on the Champions League show last night as well about some of his memories of playing against him, and what a player. But yeah, beautiful words there from McCubs and Henry. But let's kick on with the show because our question today comes in from @AnfieldRockandShock8, and it's which players in Europe are playing really well but haven't been talked about enough. So obviously the leagues have now really got started. The Champions League, the Europa League is in full flow. So today we want to analyse players that deserve more credit on the basis of their performances so far this season. And McCubs, we're kicking off in Germany, in Dortmund, but probably not with the player you'd have thought, because he's certainly been getting enough credit, Erling Haaland, but someone at the back.
Yeah, he's been getting more than enough credit, hasn't he, Haaland? Not to take away from what he's been doing, because he is pretty ridiculous, isn't he? Mats Hummels has had an excellent start to the season, hasn't he? I think, last season, obviously, Borussia Dortmund spent a lot of money to get him back to the club. Yeah, he was 30 years old. He'd spent those 3 years at Bayern. By the end of his time at Bayern, he wasn't even necessarily the first choice centre back. I think the process was already kind of starting with Niklas Süle kind of preparing to take his place. 37 million euros, which was reported at the time, did seem a bit steep. And I think probably in his last couple of years, especially in his last year at Bayern, I think he probably. Well, he definitely wasn't performing at the level that we'd seen him before. But I think it was easy to forget that, the early 2010s, I was thinking about this earlier, I can't really, aside from Piqué and Mascherano, who were kind of at the peak of their powers at Barcelona at the time, I can't really think of a better ball-playing centre-back in Europe at that moment in time. Let me know in the comments if I've missed anyone out really obvious. But yeah, he really was one of the top defenders in the world, and I think he's just kind of regained that kind of form this season. And I think also you have to consider that Dortmund's defence did take a bit of a dip following him leaving in 2016. I think they conceded less than 35 goals in his final term there under Tuchel, and then in the 3 seasons after that, I think they've been kind of topping the 40 goals against mark pretty consistently. And I was actually, I don't know, I wasn't that fussed about the move, to be fair. I thought Dortmund had a very young and exciting back line, but one that was quite beatable, and I think bringing that kind of experience back in was a very positive thing. I think his form last season, again, maybe wasn't the most consistent, but I still think they shored up defensively, and that's definitely carried on into this season even more so. So last term, obviously they finished 13 points in the end behind Bayern, conceded 41 league goals, which is actually only the 4th best record in the division. So I think that was still a marginal improvement on the season before, but this term they've just hit a new level, I think. They've obviously got 18 points from their first 8 games. Very impressive stuff. That's 3 more than at this stage last year. I think we can probably take a bit more away from their form maybe in 5-6 games time when we kind of enter the kind of halfway stage of the season. But the early signs are pretty promising. As you say, Dukes, Erling Haaland has been a big part of that, hasn't he? 16 goals from his first 11 UCL in league games. I think that's up to 18 and 12 after last night. But yeah, the defence has been just as good. They've only conceded 7 goals in 8 games to date. 3 of those actually came against Bayern. So with the exception of that very high scoring match, they've been pretty much impenetrable, and that's despite injuries to Zagadou and Schultz, which has forced them to play a very old Piszczek in there, forced Delaney to come back into defence at points as well. And the common denominator there is Hummels, and he has been outstanding. 3.9 tackles and interceptions per 90. He's winning 84% of his ground duels as well, which is pretty excellent. For context, Virgil Van Dyke was averaging around 75% last season, and I think that metric is always a little bit variable. It kind of depends on the kind of style that you're set up in. Depends on the kind of players you're coming up against, but generally speaking, that's excellent. Also winning 73% of his aerial duels, completing 85 passes a game, around a 90% pass accuracy as well. So all the base level kind of defensive, kind of good defensive numbers there. But it's his involvement in build-up, I think, which has been the most impressive. He's completing 7.8 long balls a game. That's only topped by Kimmich among outfielders in Germany. And he also leads his team for passes into the final third as well. Just all in all, he's really kind of hitting that kind of form that we kind of saw from him in the kind of 2011 to kind of 2014 kind of heyday of Borussia Dortmund in the early 2010s, which is great because I think one of the main concerns for him coming back to Dortmund was that he's not as fast as he used to be, coming into a very young, dynamic, quick side. Was he going to be able to keep up with the kind of style of play that Lucien Favre has implemented at the Westfalenstadion? But yeah, he's become a real kind of a real focal point, as it were, for lack of a better word, in terms of how they've built attacks this season. And I guess players like Jude Bellingham, Gio Reyna, who are kind of coming into this side very, very raw, can only kind of benefit from having such an experienced head behind them who's playing at such a high level still. Going back to the defensive stats very briefly, and it's definitely not a fluke that they're conceding so few goals. I think they're generating just 0.8 expected goals against per game. That's compared to 1.3 for Bayern, who I know have had their defensive issues this term. But that's quite a significant improvement on last term. I think RB Leipzig are the only team to post a better defensive record according to XG in the Bundesliga. So that suggests that once Dortmund have a fully fit back line, that they'll they've already got a very, very good base to build off. And I think that actually, more so than Haaland's form, makes me think that they could challenge deep into the Bundesliga this season, especially better than their efforts last term. So that's really exciting for me. And that's translated to the Champions League as well. Obviously, they haven't lost. Haven't even conceded actually since that opening day defeat to Lazio. Obviously beat Bruges 3-0 again last night. They're in pole position to qualify from Group F. They haven't reached the Champions League quarterfinals since 16-17. So yeah, it's looking really good for Dortmund this season. And I think Hummels, just as much as Haaland, is the man that Dortmund fans need to thank so far.
I would totally agree with that. I was pretty sceptical when he arrived, I have to say. I thought the fee, which as a club record was a lot to spend on a player who seemed to be in decline, but the way he's bounced back after a challenging first year to really nail down that sort of key man in that Dortmund side and play so well alongside Akanji, and lots of the defenders are actually defending much better. I think Thomas Meunier might be a slightly better one-on-one defender than Hakimi was last year, probably not the same attacking threat. And Zagadu's now got a big issue to get back into that side after such a promising start to his career. He's now had quite a few injury issues, but Dortmund looking pretty good. And with Bayern's sort of injury issues and problems at the back, who knows? Maybe there could be a title challenge deep into this season. But Henry, let's move over to Spain and talk about Koke, because it's been a kind of weird few years for him, but he's now playing his best football again.
That's right. I always think it's important with Koke to kind of set the scene of just how good. I think it's easy to forget just how quality he really was, and we always consider him as one of Diego Simeone's generals. He's one of these players that seems to have been part of his system the whole way through. But actually, he was there before him. He made his debut for the club in 2009, aged just 17, and has now played 467 games for the club. He's the current captain too. But I mean, that's an astonishing number. I mean, part of the reason for that is he's been incredibly consistent, played at least 40 games in all competitions in 9 consecutive seasons. And he's also got 47 caps for his country as well. And if you look back at some of his previous stats, between 2012 and 2017, he put some remarkable assists numbers together. I mean, in that period, he reached double figures on 3 separate occasions, and in 15-16, he got 14 assists, and that was only bettered by Luis Suarez and Lionel Messi, who were obviously playing together at Barcelona. Actually, I dug out quite a nice quote I found on his Wikipedia page, and this was Xavi, and this is what Xavi said about him in 2014, and it was, Koke has everything: talent, physical ability. He is a footballer of the present and the future. He has been marked out as the conductor of Spain's orchestra for the next 10 years. He's an extraordinary player. That's some incredible words.
Wow,
from
high praise.
Yeah, someone who knows what they're talking about too. And yeah, but like you said, it's been a bit of a funny couple of years for Koke since then. His influence has sort of waned a bit. His attacking numbers have certainly dropped off. And I tried to kind of, before we were filming, try and research why that might have been. And it was clear when he was playing at his peak, I had a look at some of his heat maps. And he was predominantly, although he's not sort of blessed with pace, but he tended to be a left-sided midfielder. He played out on the left wing there. And you have to bear in mind, during sort of heyday, he was playing with Griezmann and Diego Costa at the points where they were scoring, 20 plus goals a season. But in the last 2 seasons, he's dropped more into a central midfield role. And he's always had a great defensive contribution as well. And I feel as if that kind of loyalty to Simeone, he's always been the one that's been moved around in the midfield a little bit. And as a result, he's sort of lost his attacking intensity. And during his best years, I think 75% of his touches and passes were coming in the attacking third, and certainly in the opposition half. But then in recent years, that's dropped down to 66% as he's found himself sort of tucked in his own half a lot more. And as a result, obviously, his performances have dropped off to the point, in the eyes certainly of his own fans, that he was even being whistled at the Wanda Metropolitano back in October 2019. And he hadn't until this season received a call-up for the Spanish national side in about 2 years. But as you said, Dougie, there's a reason he's on this show this week, and that's because his numbers have really begun to improve this season. He's seen a notable increase in forward runs to join Joao Felix and Suarez in attack. His touches per game have gone from 71 to 88, while his successful passes have gone from 47 to 65 per game. Last season, I had a look, was his lowest touches per game in certainly the last 5-6 seasons in an Atletico shirt, which just shows, if you consider last season, Atletico kind of shrunk back into that dogged Diego Simeone shell because their attacking kind of capabilities waned a little bit without Griezmann, and Joao Felix was struggling to kind of fill that gap, and also Morata was trying his best, but they weren't as clinical in attack, and I feel as if Koke probably shrunk back into his shell a little bit in that moment. But like I said, this year he's beginning to explode a little bit again, along with that kind of renaissance of the Atletico attack that we're seeing, which has propelled them to, within touching distance of first place in La Liga. But it's not just his attack involvement that's improved everywhere. He's on 3.8 tackles and interceptions per 90, which is up in the season before. And he's also creating 1.5 chances per 90. Only Joao Felix has created more than his 10. So yeah, like I said, he's always had an amazing defensive contribution, and now that's back on the up as well. Although he hasn't registered a goal or assist in La Liga this season, expected assists suggest that he should have. He should be on 1.5. But I think we need to return to this idea of what Xavi said about him as the conductor, about the conductor of the orchestra. And that's what we're beginning to see now, because he leads the squad for passes into the final third. He's on 6.8, up from 3.9, and progressive passes 9.1, up from 3.8. And yeah, he's only ranks behind Kieran Trippier for passes into the penalty area too. So we're beginning to see him really pulling the strings from midfield. And when you consider that, Angel Correa and Joao Felix, they've got an amazing relationship right now. Marcos Llorente has reinvented himself as this kind of marauding attacking midfielder, which none of us would have predicted sort of 12 months ago. And obviously Luis Suarez's influence on the team as well. Koke is now in the midfield, been able to sit back there and just pull the strings and find these guys in attacking positions and find those pockets of space, which is really where he's been at his best over the past few years, is finding the pockets of space. And and you're always going to get a full-blooded display from him as captain. And it's interesting to see he's recently been even called up to the national team again after being previously left out by Moreno and Luis Enrique in the aftermath of the 2018 World Cup. And he captained the side in that recent battering over Germany too, just to show the kind of influence and the maturity and presence that he has on the pitch. So yeah, I think it's brilliant to see this kind of turnaround from Koke. He's never ever going to be one that's going to be fully appreciated and sort of blown up in the sense of being one of the best midfielders. I think, if you go over to Sunday Vibes, you'll see them debating who's the best attacking midfielder right now. Koke, I don't think he'll ever really enter that debate, but that overlooks the kind of qualities and the ability that he does have. And he is an amazing passer of the ball, and he clearly has an eye for creativity in a pass too, which makes him such a useful asset. And it's brilliant to see him he's indicative of why Atletico are looking so good this season, in my opinion. He's rediscovered that attacking flair, and he's rediscovered what makes them so special, and I think that's so exciting.
He has been absolutely brilliant, and he's been part of a sort of Spanish generation of players alongside sort of Isco and Morata that have sort of struggled to live up to the David Villas, the Xavis, the Iniestas, that incredible crop of talent, which is no slight on them. It's just, enormous shoes to fill, but it's great seeing Koke sort of back to his best, and he's always been such an unselfish footballer, almost too unselfish at times, and would put himself in positions just to cover the team's deficiencies and play to the team's strengths. But actually, when he does have the opportunity to roam forward, he is so dangerous in the opposition final third, and I'm sure those goals and assist tallies will leap up as the season progresses. I want to talk about Alvaro Morata though, who we've mentioned a couple of times on this show, but there is no doubt that his £9 million loan from Atletico Madrid is actually really working out for both parties. It's fair to say he never really got going at Atleti with just 22 goals in 62 games spread across 2 seasons, but in his 8 weeks in Turin with Juventus, he's actually been really solid. 7 goals in 10 games, including 5 in the Champions League, a tournament that he's always struggled in, which is only taught by Haaland at the time of writing. Means that, he definitely deserves more plaudits. His shots have actually gone down from 3 to 2.5, but he's now creating 2.3 chances per 90, up from 1.1 last year, as well as 1.5 dribbles, up from 0.8. And you've seen it in his hold-up play, in his runs. He's really working for the team now, and with more sort of possession in the final third and more cutting edge around him this year at Juventus compared to last year at Atletico Madrid, he's really profiting. So far in the league, he's played 6 games. He's got 2 goals and 3 assists. He ranks 2nd for shots, 3rd for key passes, and 4th for dribbles. And after being fairly sceptical about what sort of impact he was going to have at Juventus, because he very much felt like a sort of 3rd or 4th choice there. I mean, they were looking at Milik, they were looking at Dzeko, they were looking at Raul Jimenez. They eventually went for Morata, didn't want to sign him permanently, so went for him on loan. It felt like they were sort of just seeing how it went, and I'd be surprised if they didn't make it permanent now, to be honest. His expected goals and assists per 90 have gone up to 0.93, up from 0.83 last year. And Juve, despite an inconsistent start, I don't think they've really got going, particularly in an attacking sense. They're actually now just 4 points off top spot, and they still are unbeaten despite drawing too many games. So Morata definitely deserves a bit more credit. And then just as a final sort of footnote on this section, I wanted to mention Darwin Nunez, someone slightly off the beaten track. So the 21-year-old Uruguayan striker shot to prominence after a magnificent spell with Almeria last year in the Segunda Division in Spain. He netted 16 goals in 30 games, which was only topped by 3 players in the league, which is pretty impressive for a 21-year-old playing in a very physical league. He then signed for Benfica in September for a Liga NOS record of 24 million euros, which felt like a lot on a 21-year-old, signing a 5-year contract, so big commitment from Benfica. But so far, it's gone really well. He started with a bang. He got 4 assists in his first 4 games, and then a hat-trick versus Lech Poznan in the Europa League. So overall, he's got 5 goals and 5 assists in 10 League and Europa League games so far this season. His league stats aren't magnificent at this time, like just 2.7 shots, 1.5 key passes. Very solid, but it's not sort of ripping up trees in Portugal. But for a 21-year-old who's just joined, made a massive step up in league, in sort of club, in stature, that's pretty promising. And they've got some quite promising attacking options, Benfica. They've got Everton, they've got Pizzi, they've got Rafa, they've got Waldschmidt as well. They're actually currently 3rd. They're 4 points behind leaders Sporting, who have 6 wins from 7 games under new management. Can't quite remember the name of Sporting's new manager. Maybe it'll come to me in a minute. But Darwin Nunez definitely deserves a lot of credit for pretty much going under the radar so far this season. Not a lot of people talking about him, at least in England. But guys, we want to hear more about his style of play. What do you think he can achieve at Benfica? I mean, McCubs, you said you were pretty impressed with how he looked, a sort of all-round forward.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at him before the season started, just when Benfica bought him, and yeah, like his he just looked unplayable at points in the Segunda Division. Like obviously very quick, because he's pretty young and kind of have to be as a centre forward, don't you, these days? But the physical side of his game in particular, like he's very, I don't know, he works really hard. He's a handful for defenders. He's always kind of plays off the last man, but can get past them as well. He looks like a very, very exciting prospect. And I wasn't necessarily that big a fan of their kind of record signing of him, just because of their other attacking options at the time, and they just signed Waldschmidt as well. It just seemed like a bit like they were kind of overcompensating. But yeah, he's doing really well. And I was reading this week that Man City have been monitoring him. I think Barcelona have been linked with him as well. Obviously, he's Uruguayan, and I guess his style of play also kind of has brought him some kind of comparisons to Suarez. So I'm sure those links will continue to make the press. He's really exciting. I'm really looking forward to seeing kind of his progress over the next year or two.
I remember Jorge Jesus, the Benfica coach. He did say that any move for Darwin Nunez would already have to trump whatever money that Atletico paid for Joao Felix, which I think is about 110 million. He said the only way. He said recently, because I think McCubs, we've both written about.
I think he did say that. I think he basically said that when they signed him. which was a massive talk. But yeah, I wouldn't. I mean, the kind of prices that are paid for young stars these days. If he hits 20 plus goals in the Liga NOS and is looking, and already looks physically like he could kind of cut it in a top 5 league, then yeah, like 80 plus mil, I'm sure will be the kind of price tag that he'll be associated with.
George Jesus I should say, is a very wily old fox as well. I'm sure he'll drive a very hard bargain. Henry's also very helpfully written on the script that the sporting coach is Ruben Amorim, so go check him out as well, guys.
He featured in a top 10 like rising managers script that you can find on Euro Football Daily. He featured on that. He won the Portuguese Cup with Braga last season in his first real proper job, and yeah, he's sort of been pitched as the next big Portuguese managerial star. So there's the reason Sporting are doing top. But yeah, anyway, that's just a shameless plug for you to search out one of our managerial 10s, which we always enjoy doing.
Absolutely, go check that out. And guys, let us know who your players are who are going under the radar so far this season in the comments down below. And let's move on to our big match preview. For our big match preview, it was actually a little bit of a struggle. It's a little bit of a quiet weekend in terms of mega fixtures in Europe. In Italy, Napoli take on Roma, but we talked about Napoli last weekend, who then lost to AC Milan. We could have talked about Gladbach versus Schalke in the Bundesliga, but the biggest game of the weekend is taking place in Spain, with Valencia taking on title-chasing Atletico Madrid. Henry, Valencia, it's been a weird start to the season after a weird summer, really.
You're not wrong. I mean, it's actually a testament to the current side that they are doing as well as they are, because we have to remember in the summer, absolute chaos. They sold £67 million worth of talent. We're talking about Rodrigo to Leeds, Ferran Torres to Manchester City, which could turn out to be one of the all-time great kind of coups for Manchester City, I think, for the money they paid for him. Coquelin and Parejo obviously went to cross-city rivals Villarreal. Parejo infamously on a free. And then Joffrey Kondogbio in November, after kicking up a giant fuss, finally got his move to Atletico Madrid. He's gone there, which should be a really interesting, that's a nice dynamic to this game actually. The fact that Kondogbio will be coming up against Atletico again, who's really unhappy with the director of the club there. It wasn't Peter Lim, I can't remember his name, but he sort of eventually got his move after...
Is it Anel Murphy, I think he's
Yes,
called.
That's correct. After the guy... who moved to Manchester City? Who moved to... Thomas Partey, that's it. So it really kicked off fast after Thomas Partey got his move to Arsenal. Anyway, so they've actually started quite surprisingly well. They've taken 12 points from their opening 10 games. They're sit 9th in La Liga. That said, Barcelona behind them with a couple of games in hand. It's likely that they'll be overtaken there. But La Liga's looking incredibly tight this season. Only 3 points separate 5th place Cadiz from 14th place Osasuna. At the time of writing, all the teams have kind of played a different amount of games, which makes it difficult to really comprehend exactly where the table stands. But Valencia have been sort of bizarrely inconsistent. They've beaten Real Sociedad, who are currently top of the table, and they also beat Real Madrid 4-1 as well. I think it's worth mentioning they did get 3 penalties in that game. But then again, they've been beaten by Elche and 20th placed Celta Vigo, who just can't seem to get their act together no matter how hard they try. I think considering what's happened to their team, it's basically been stripped of its best assets. The fact their stats are quite poor isn't really shocking. They're ranked 13th for shots per game, just 9.6, and 19th for shots again, with only Elche conceding more than their 15.1 shots per game. I think they're one of the worst teams in terms of the goals against as well this season, on level with both the teams in the relegation zone right now. And actually, expected points ranks them as the 14th best side in Spain. So they're kind of riding their luck a little bit. But Javi Gracia, he actually does have to take a tremendous amount of credit for what he's done. This surely cannot be what he expected. The job he was going to be taking on. And, I always thought that at Watford, he was quite impressive, the way he managed to get sort of a decent group of individuals to really gel as a team and create that unifying ability that kept them in the Premier League. Because I never felt sort of Watford were going to blow away any team, but they sort of managed to dig out every game, and I think it was quite unfairly sacked by the Pozzo family. And it was,
I think that's fair.
Yeah, What, you think it was fair that he was sacked or unfairly sacked?
No. I think your thoughts on him being. I thought it was quite unfair as well. I mean, they got FA Cup final as well, didn't they? Finished about 13th.
And you know, I didn't really. He came from Ruben Kazan. You have to remember, like, it's sort of out of the blue a point, but he's done really well. And I think what you see of the team, he's tried to make them quite compact. They catch the opposition offside second most amount of times in the Premier League. They scored the joint most from set pieces as well, which kind of shows you where they've kind of turned their attacking intent towards. And yeah, like we said, they don't take a huge amount of shots, but there are still reasons to be kind of excited about this team. For example, they've got Eunice Musa, who's the 17-year-old English right winger. He's showing glimpses of talent. Lee Kangin, who who's the subject, I think under Marcelo, there was a lot of debate about whether he should be played or not. I think the owners wanted him to be played, but Marcelino didn't want that to happen at the time. But he's kind of beginning to step up a little bit. And if you look at their squad, they've really had to accelerate a lot of their younger players into these positions. But yeah, if we just turn back to Eunice Musa, obviously as an English talent, it's quite exciting. He's played in 9 of their 10 fixtures, 8 starts, and those 0.3 shots and key passes, which are 0.5, don't look that special. He is completing 1.7 dribbles to 90 with a 63% completion rate. So he should develop as the season goes on and he gets more minutes. It's incredible that he is playing in La Liga. And it's also good to see a 23-year-old Carlos Soler back in form. Obviously, he did get a hat-trick of penalties. I'm not going to read into his goal scoring too much, but in 1920 he only got 2 goals and 0 assists, and he's already on 4 goals and 2 assists after just 6 games so far, and his key passes have all improved and all that stuff as well. And they still do have a fairly competent squad. They've got Maxi Gomez, Gonzalo Guedes and Jose Gaya. I mean, I think Gaya was particularly one of their... They refused to sell him at all this summer. He was one of their unsellable assets as far as they were concerned. And up front, they've still got Kevin Gameiro. He's 33 now. He's still operating. And on the wing, Denis Cheryshev as well. So they do have players that can hurt you. But I do think, in context of this game, a stat which is quite telling is Valencia spend the least amount of time in the middle third of the pitch than anyone in La Liga. That's what I was reading beforehand. And I think that's what happens when someone like Kondogbia gets ripped out away from them, and Danny Parejo as well, and Francis Coquelin. They've lost the 3 most recognisable faces within that midfield, and they've had to compensate by bypassing that. And I think, and the person who's had to fill in next to Carlos Soler is a guy called Uroš Rasic, who last season was on loan at Famalicão in the Portuguese league. He's a sort of Serbian under-21 midfielder. He's already played 7 games so far this season. I don't know too much about him, I won't lie, but obviously he's been thrust into that starting lineup and sort of demanded to perform. He's been made to perform. But it's interesting that Valencia have kind of bypassed their midfield, because clearly this is where they feel they've been the most weakest since that ridiculous summer outlay. And for me personally, this is where the battle is going to be on against Atletico Madrid. Atletico, who I'm sure McCubs will go into, we've talked about Koke, do have an exceptional midfield right now. And I really think this is where Valencia could struggle, because clearly this is where sides are getting in at Valencia. And the reason they're conceding so many shots is because they're kind of very porous in the midfield area there. So yeah, for me the midfield battle is where it's really going to lie. But yeah, it's not, considering everything that happened at Valencia, it is impressive to see them where they are, and I think they've got plenty enough talent to certainly survive this season. Whether or not they can, I don't think they're going to finish anywhere higher than the 9th position they're in right now. But yeah, I mean, it's not all doom and gloom on the east coast of Spain.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I thought they were potential relegation candidates with the amount of chaos that was going on this summer. Peter Lim and his daughter fighting with the fans. It just felt like any player that wasn't going to be picked up in this mass sale was going to be really low, have low motivation. Obviously a new manager coming in. So not too bad, all things considered, for Valencia. But McCubs, they are facing a massive test this weekend in Atletico Madrid, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, like we were saying with in regards to Koke's form, Atleti have just been pretty magnificent, haven't they, at the start of the season? They played 11 games in all competitions, only lost 1 of those, won 7 of them. Only defeat came away at Bayern Munich. We all saw that game. Can't really take away too much from that in the grand scheme of things. Only Real Sociedad have scored more than their 18 league goals, which is mighty impressive. I know that kind of says also a lot about kind of the faltering starts of Real Madrid and in particular Barcelona at the start of this season. But considering that even by Atleti's standards, the previous 2 seasons were very low scoring, and probably saw Simeone's side play some of the probably the most dull football of his kind of era at the I was going to say Wanda Metropolitano, but obviously they've only been there last year. But of his era in the Spanish capital, says a lot about how well they've kind of bounced back this term. They're the only side unbeaten in La Liga. They've already beaten Barcelona. They've drawn against third place Villarreal. So it's not like they haven't had tests already. That Barcelona game, I only saw the last half an hour of it, but and by that point they really were just defending, and I think that's probably a little bit of an anomaly, and I think we can still expect to see them batten down the hatches in those big games. However, I think it's their performance against the smaller teams which has really impressed, hasn't it? They've really kind of, Simeone's really let the shackles off that attack. Obviously, they had the kind of reinvention of Marcos Llorente, which we were already seeing at the kind of back end of last season, has had a real big part to play, I think, in filling that void that Griezmann left, and was already kind of that kind of chasm, I guess, between the midfield and attack, which was already actually beginning to show even before Griezmann went to Barcelona. That seems to have been really bridged, and obviously Joao Felix's development. Luis Suarez coming in had a big part to play as well. When we look at their stats, at their kind of more underlying stats, only Barcelona and Real Madrid are averaging more than their 13.1 shots a game. They also rank third for shots on target a game. That's risen from 11.8 in 1919-20, so a pretty significant increase, around 1.5 shots more per game. On the defensive end, they actually rank 11th for shots against, and 4th for expected goals against. So usually they're far and away, aren't they, out on top in terms of the defensive numbers. But I guess the attacking output has made up for that. But at the same time, it's clear that they are limiting teams to kind of low quality shots from outside the box from that. So in that sense, not that much has changed. And I guess maybe losing Thomas Partey as well maybe has something a little bit to do with that. As well, despite the continued excellence of Koke and Saul. Expected points ranks them 4th actually in Spain. That's behind Sociedad, Villarreal and Real Madrid. But they do have 2 games in hand. So I think if you were looking at that on per 90, they probably rank pretty a little bit higher. If they win both, they'll be 3 points clear of Sociedad at the top as well. So this is a big game for them actually against like you said, a Valencia side which. I guess are a little bit unpredictable this season, I guess. And going into some of their star performers, obviously we've spoken about Koke before, but Jan Oblak has been superb as always. One of 2 players to play every minute this season alongside Trippier. 93% save percentage. That's the best record in Europe. He's helped Atletico concede 6 fewer goals than XG predicts. So he's really having a world-class start to the season. After last term, where I think there were a few moments where people were questioning Oblak a bit actually last season. First time since he's really broken onto the scene where he was really having doubters as to his kind of consistency. But he's really very much back to his best. Joao Felix, like we said, been excellent. 5 goals, 2 assists in 7 La Liga games. He looks like he's really arrived in the Spanish top flight now, doesn't he? And of course Luis Suarez, who's helped bring that out of him as well. 5 goals, 1 assist in 6 La Liga games. Unfortunately, he's out again with coronavirus this weekend, and I think we saw that against Barcelona, that they didn't have quite the options that he brings going forward. They were missing, weren't they, against Barcelona, and I think that's why they created so little, or at least partly why they created so little against the Blaugrana. So it'll be interesting to see how they deal with his loss again, because that could be a little bit of a difficulty for Simeone's men. But having said that, I think that only puts more onus on Joao Felix, and if Joao Felix is going to carry on this great run that he's on, I guess he's got to show that he can do it by himself. Suarez isn't getting any younger, and he was a great pickup in the summer. But Joao Felix is the future of that attack, isn't he? And he's a match winner now. He ranks 2nd for shots in the squad. He ranks 1st for key passes, ranks 1st for dribbles. His combined expected goals and assists per 90 is at 0.91. That's up from 0.53 last term. So it just goes to show how much progress he's made this term. And this is a massive game for Atleti, as I was saying. They've got Bayern next in the Champions League, then they've got Real Valladolid, then they've got Salzburg, and then Real Madrid, all before the 12th of December.
Wow.
So actually, we talk about how well they've done this season, but even having said that, this is a must-win game for them. And especially, without Suarez, I think, massive game for Joao Felix, massive game for Marcos Llorente as well. I think this is going to be a tough game. I think it's going to be tight.
Yeah, I mean, it would suggest... I mean, their previous games would suggest that it will be tight. They've generally been low scoring, but Atleti have definitely had the better of it recently. In their last 17 meetings in all competitions, they've lost just once, with 9 wins and 7 draws. Valencia also have some injury issues. Diakabi is still out with a hamstring issue, their centre-back. So is Salason. Maxi Gomez missed their last game with injury, although I'm not sure whether he'll be back for this one. As McCubs says, Suarez is out with coronavirus. Torreira is out with coronavirus unless they pass a positive test beforehand. For Schalke has been a long-term injury, and Herrera is also out as well. So I think it's really difficult to look past Atleti really in this one. But what is going to be the score? What is going to be the final score, Henry Hill?
Well, we were all completely wrong about Napoli AC Milan last week. Fair play to AC Milan. So I agree with you completely. I think Atletico. I think it's going to be an entertaining game. I think there are going to be opportunities to score. I'm going to go as high as 4-1.
Wow.
4-1, love it. Okay, McCubs, what are you saying?
I think it's going to be a lot tighter. Actually, I was actually toying with a draw, but I think Atleti are just too strong. But I think it's just going to be 1-0. I think it's going to be pretty tight affair.
Fair. I'm going 2-0 Atleti, but a close affair as well. Thank you very much. Get your score predictions in the comments down below, and let's move on to our quickfire question. Our quickfire question this week comes in from Kunal Was Here, and it's who are the big teams that are likely to be dumped into the Europa League? Henry, who's your call for this?
Well, straight off the bat, I actually watched the Inter Milan game last night against Real Madrid. I think they're surely out. I think Mitch and Gladbach have been so impressive. That big win against Shakhtar again. And Inter, I mean, it was just a disaster, wasn't it, last night for them? So I think Inter are gone for the second season in a row. But also, interesting, we've been talking about Atletico Madrid, and you just mentioned McCubs about their run in there. I think they're in real danger. They played Lokomotiv Moscow, and they only got 2 draws against Lokomotiv. And now they've got Bayern Munich next. If Bayern beat them and Salzburg, I mean, there's big ifs here, but if Salzburg can beat Lokomotiv Moscow, which, based on their attacking numbers, if you consider XG, they actually were better than Bayern Munich last night. We're incredibly unlucky once again to sort of walk away with a defeat there. If Salzburg can beat Lokomotiv and Bayern beat Atletico, which I'd expect them to do, then that game that's a massive final. That's going to be in Austria, Atletico versus Salzburg. And I think once again, Atletico were quite fortunate to beat Salzburg at the Wanda Metropolitano, and I don't see, for all how well they've been playing in La Liga, they have actually been struggling in Europe. They haven't been that efficient in Europe. So I'm hoping that Bayern do beat them and Salzburg do beat Lokomotiv to set up this kind of big final clash, because I do think that Salzburg in a one-off game could have the edge on them. So I do worry for Atletico, but I think, McCubs, you probably highlight some teams who are perhaps in more danger than them.
Potentially. I mean, I'm just looking at the the kind of group of death, as it were: PSG, Leipzig, Man United. I mean, it looks more and more likely that Leipzig or PSG will go out. I think United, because of their goal difference, I think only need a point or 2 from their final 2 games. Obviously, they do have the toughest run in with PSG and Leipzig still to come. However, I just think, I don't know, PSG's form has been so up and down in the Champions League, hasn't it? I think that win against Leipzig, obviously, the other night was, not the most convincing. Very important, obviously. I think they would basically be odds on to go out if they hadn't got those 3 points. But both sides have obviously looked pretty inconsistent in the Champions League. I think people gave a little bit too much credit to Leipzig in the last. In that defeat to United. I think it was probably a little bit kind, but Leipzig were very rarely the better team. I think people were kind of talking about it afterwards, saying that Leipzig were very much kind of the more accomplished team for most of the game, when in fact I think there was maybe a 10-minute spell where they looked dangerous. Aside from that, they didn't at all. So I think, both those sides obviously still have to play Istanbul, and I think Istanbul will basically have the say in that. They obviously have been pretty poor all the way through, but going away to them won't be easy for either side. I'm not even sure who has to go away to them, because one of them will have to have them at home, I'm assuming. Leipzig go away to them next. And then I guess PSG host them on the final day. So maybe the odds are in PSG's favour on that one. So Leipzig, I reckon, could be in real danger.
Oh, you don't want to draw Leipzig in the Europa League if they do drop in, that's for sure. I'm going to go with Ajax. I think they're going to drop in. They scored an amazing goal yesterday against Michelin from Ryan Gravenberch, who we talked about on this show a couple of weeks ago. But I just feel like Atalanta should have enough to get through that group. I know they're level on points at the moment, but Ajax still have to go to Anfield, which hasn't been the absolute fortress that it has been in the Premier League in recent years in the Champions League, but it's still a massive task for a young Ajax side. So I think Ajax will drop into the Europa League. But guys, let us know who you think will drop into the Europa League in the comments down below. And that's all we've got time for on Continental Club for this week. Thank you so much for watching once again. Let us know what you thought of our comments in the comment section, as I just said. And Henry, what should they go and watch now?
Just keep supporting our explained new channels that we've got coming out right now, EFD Explained and FD Explained. We've got some really quality content. I think we're really trying to sort of step up our game in that kind of front. So just see what you think.
Nice. Anything from you, McCubs?
Stay tuned for the football pyramid tomorrow. It's a very bad tempered tie between myself and Henry. It's a real battle for the ages, that one. Lots of drama. It's got all the elements that a great football pyramid needs. So go and check that out.
Absolutely, and go show some love to our brand new show, The Expert, which dropped yesterday at 5 p.m. on EFD, where I talked to Tom Olnott, the Spanish football insider, about Messi's future at Atletico Madrid and Real Sociedad. So go check that out. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.